We actually want to build this time on the topic that we started last time, and it was a huge discussion. And we realized we started talking about how to apply the human needs in a business context, in that business environment. So some of you also asked some of those questions. How do we meet those needs by building those healthier working cultures? So that's exactly what we want to dig in deeper today and look at human needs in working environment.
Absolutely. So thinking about kind of how our needs should be met in our working environment, but also how our personal circumstances, our personal lives, and what might be going on outside of a work environment will affect and change how we need our needs to be met within the work environment as well.
Right. So for those of you who haven't listened to the previous episode, just a brief introduction into the model of the C of human needs. So this is approach that I use looking from evolutionary neuroscience point of view. What are some of those intrinsic needs that we all need to have met in our lives, in our world, in our environment? And the S stands for safety, E is for exploration, and A is for affiliation. So some of those needs, if we look from safety perspective, it's a stability, routine, familiarity. We want some sort of stable ground to stand on. But then when we look at the exploration, it's the complete opposite of that, right? We want to venture out to unknown. We want to explore unknown territories and boundaries, and we want to push our own boundaries physically, emotionally. We want to challenge ourselves to grow and learn. And then finally, A is for affiliation, where for millions of years we wouldn't have been able to survive on our own. We are social beings. We evolved to be part of the group, and therefore that affiliation is one of our very important needs. So we will be looking at each of those and how can we meet those in a working context, and that in turn leads to psychologically safe environments at work and healthy cultures where people can really thrive and perform at their best level.
Absolutely. So why don't we start with the S? So safety, being the broad heading, and you kind of mentioned security and stability come to contribute to that. So I wonder, yeah, from your perspective, tell us a little bit more about why we need that, why that's so important to us. I mean, it might seem obvious, safety, but I mean, kind of what that then enables. But I guess then what that looks like in terms of working policies and practices we can then talk about.
Yeah, well, why we need that? I think it's a very, very basic survival mechanism, right? We want to be safe. We want to know that we are alive, that we can reproduce, we can survive. It's a very, very simple survival mechanism. And that is primary driver before anything else, right? So in order to be safe, now there are different aspects of it. So like we touched on last time, there are some aspects that come from our past, and it's based on what have we learned about this world and about ourselves and about other people. Is this world safe? Are other people good or dangerous? Are we ourselves capable of maintaining the autonomy and control to guarantee that safety? So all of those aspects are still sitting within that safety. So there are sub needs within that safety aspect, and some of them are related to the past and your past experiences. Some of them are related to the future and knowing that you still have a tomorrow, and you know that you know what will happen tomorrow. So there's a lot of anxieties and uncertainties if we are missing some of those information. some of that information about what's about to happen, it gives us insecurity, right? But also there is this certainty about an autonomy about ourselves, about being in control, you know, having some sort of way of influencing, you know, the future and the direction and your ways of working and, you know, where you are and choosing your physical environment and so on.
So in terms of working practices, and sort of thinking about policies, and managing kind of your team and your people, we want to make sure then that people know what's expected of them. So that gives them that safety and security and the stability of knowing what is coming up, but having a level of, just like you say, autonomy. So being able to have a level of control over what they will be doing, when they will be doing it, in what manner, and where their job is going or where their activities and tasks are leading, and also having sort of boundaries, so knowing that they will have the protection of boundaries and that there will be safe space for them to work, but also safe space for them to then leave work and not be thinking about those things.
Definitely.
But also
So things like safety from harm physically, and like you've just started to say as well, that psychological sense of safety as well, feeling free from abuse, you know, being able to feel safe within the building with the people that we are surrounded with. It plays a huge role in that need, and this has really been thrown out of the window with our remote ways of working, because people don't know sometimes now what's expected of them, where they are supposed to be, you know, from where they are supposed to work, and no clear boundaries can really affect this lack of stability and security.
Certainly, and we'll talk a bit about it later, but depending on what's going on at home, someone may need that more or less in the workplace. And instead, if someone needs that less in the workplace, they might be looking for more exploration, which is the second kind of human need that we want to attend to. And so thinking about how that manifests in the workplace, as we might be looking at training opportunities, so encountering new things, exploring new intellectual territory, and being able to develop new skills, being challenged, having to think creatively. And that's sort of, once we have that basis of safety and security, then that's when we are able to explore. But I'm sure kind of what you might be thinking is that if we don't have that basis of safety, we're not going to be as efficient, and we're not going to be as good at exploring, thinking creatively, challenging ourselves, and maintaining that resilience when we are in challenging circumstances without that basis as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So this exploration it's in a contrast to the safety, right? Because when you think about this, we have those two needs that are complete opposites, and yet we need to make sure that they are both being met. There is a right balance between them. There is right amount of safety, but there is also right amount of challenge and opportunity. And if you have too much of one or the other, you know, if all you have is too much routine and safety and everything is the same, now it's boring, right? There is no stretch for people to grow, and you lose your motivation, and sometimes even, you know, things like depression. There is too much of being stuck in your ways of thinking, doing, being, and not being able to go out there, and not being able to make anything out of the opportunities that are around you. But then too much exploration, too much pressure, now that's chaos, and that now becomes threatening to our safety and to our survival. So we need that balance. Yeah, and if you think from kind of evolutionary perspective, something that we mentioned last time is that people traveled this way, right? We've evolved, we spread across the earth this way, that we would set up a safe camp, we would explore as far as we can go, that it allows us to safely go back to our safe base. But then at some point, once we've explored that territory, now we want to venture beyond that and explore like what is, behind that mountain, what is beyond that territory. So you kind of move your safe base to the edge of the safe territory so you can venture further. But it's
Mhm.
always the balance between how can I still explore while maintaining the safety and security. So from the business point of view, it's very, very crucial to understand this balance and understand which of those needs are being met for people in the workplace, right?
Certainly, and understanding as well what somebody needs and really asking whether you don't have to use those terms, safety or exploration, but asking what they want. Do they want to be challenged more? Do they want to learn more? Or do they want to develop more security in what they're doing and more of an understanding in that routine? Can also give you a bit of insight into what might be going on for them psychologically or outside of work that you can then support with as an employer, by making sure that you are really listening to those needs, because everyone will come with a slightly different balance of all three of these needs, and making sure that we have the opportunity for every person to kind of make the right balance for them is kind of
Mhm.
ideal. So I guess that kind
Yeah.
of moves us on to our next one, being affiliation, and kind of thinking about the group dynamic and that sense of belonging within the group as well.
Yeah, and of course we wouldn't have been able to survive on our own, and our sense of safety and security is very, very closely linked to being that part of the group. And there are some of these other needs that are inclusive into that wider bucket of affiliation, right? Because there is a sense of belonging, and that is more about your roots, like knowing where you come from, right? Because sometimes the sense of belonging, it has nothing to do with people we are surrounded with currently. You can have a sense of I belong, I know where I come from, I have a sense of roots. That's more of a psychological um, background more than anything else, right? Inclusion, in a contrast, now that is all about the present current moment, and it's about I am included into where I am. I belong to this group. I belong to this tribe. I am liked and appreciated for who I am, and I'm free to be myself. And when we talk about things like appreciation, that is crucial because if we are not appreciated, if you are not recognizing if your contribution and efforts are not being recognized, now what this means, you are not feeling needed. And if you are not feeling needed in that group, now your subconscious brain is sounding this alarm bell that's saying there is a risk of exclusion here because you're not needed anymore, right? So of course, nowadays we can perfectly survive on our own. We can provide for all of our needs, and we can live safely within our home, and we don't need to go hunting on our own to fetch food and so on. But our brain hasn't evolved to catch up with the way we live in our society. This gap is far too huge, right? So any sense of lack of appreciation, lack of even understanding your role that you play in that group will threaten that affiliation. And that by nature it creates hierarchical systems, because if in order to have a specific way of contributing a specific role, that means you also have a specific place in a hierarchy. And that's again where it can be linked to some of that exploration and challenge, because it's kind of ongoing. I'm not going to say struggle, but kind of ongoing journey for respect, for
Mm.
specific status, for having specific level in that hierarchy, that that you you have that access to competition, right? And both from resources point of view, both from even you think about kind of mating and affection and love and procreation. You know, we want to have this hierarchy, knowing like where do we stand in this community, in this space. What is my contribution? What am I bringing? And here it's so crucial for companies to have those very clear ways of communicating, so it is clear what this person contributing, what is the bigger impact that they are making. So connecting to the purpose of this wider, bigger hierarchy in terms of what each individual, what impact this person makes in that bigger context, can really feed into this, I know I'm needed, I know I'm contributing, I know where I belong, I know where I stand.
Certainly. And so like having within working practices, I suppose, being really clear about what exactly, like you say, what someone's role is, and that will contribute to the safety element as well, making sure that someone's work is acknowledged and the impact of it is shown and appreciated. Also having very, very clear and very strong DE&I practices to make sure that everybody's background and everyone's personality, their identity, their characteristics is welcome and celebrated and understood, can make sure that somebody doesn't feel excluded as well based on any parts of themselves. So really bringing that sense of affiliation in. And, you know, we normally sometimes when we think about affiliation, we can just think about, you know, having lots of team activities. Those are great, and kind of having that social side of work is fantastic. Not everyone's going to want to take it up, but having the opportunity, I think, is really important. And I suppose that brings us on to a little bit of a summary, and I'll kind of lead into that by saying that, as we've been saying throughout, is that not everyone will need all of these needs to be met within the workplace. You know, if somebody has, for example, a really strong rooting in their family life or their friendships outside of work, they may not need such a strong sense of affiliation within work. You'll still want to make sure that somebody's impact is acknowledged, their role is recognized, but they might not participate in as many social engagements and things like that. Equally, there might be some people who don't have such a strong rooting for that in their personal lives, and therefore want to put more effort and energy into participating within the work context. And it's the same for the others.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think here what is important to realize from employment point of view, as we are battling for skills and shortage of right people to fill the right roles, is that not everybody is not everyone wants to have the promotion, and not everyone wants to be pushed for growth. There are some people who might be having very challenging lives or abusive relationships, and therefore the work gives them that sense of stability, security, and therefore they want that routine. They want to come and do exactly the same shift and exactly the same tasks. While for somebody else who has this more stable background and who are coming to work for, you know, really to push and challenge themselves, they might not understand that not everybody else wants the same. So it's very, very important for line managers and for HR to really understand what are those drivers for this person? What is this person specifically getting out of work for their individual level, for their human needs, right? Because if we know that, we can really drive their level of motivation and their level of performance, and we can really tailor their job descriptions and activities in a way where they can contribute to their best capacity and be their best and be their happiest as well, right?
Certainly, and happy employees make effective employees, and they stay for longer, which benefits retention rates. So moral of the story is to kind of really attend to everyone's needs and listen and make sure that they can be served.
Absolutely. And I think definitely we talk about human resources, but very often we are just treating them as resources, and we forget that it's human beings who are driving our profit, our effectiveness, productivity. And let this be a nice reminder for bringing the human back into the business. So thank you so much.